Hi, it's Michelle Teberge from michelleteberge.com and from themindfulartist.com. And today is a fun day. I'm going to be preparing some panels to paint on. Okay, so I've got my supplies here. I've got some panels that I bought at the art supply store. I don't make them myself, but some people do, and I'm sure there's some great tutorials here on YouTube to figure out how to do that, but not my skill set and not how I want to spend my time, so I buy them. So I've got some blue painter's tape. I'm going to tape the edges out. I've got some brushes. I haven't gessoed panels this small in a long time, so I wasn't sure which brushes I'd like. I have a container for gesso or water. I've got stir sticks. I've got my professional gesso here, and just a rag for cleanup. So I'm first going to just tape the edge of these paintings, and just do it like so. And you probably want to burnish down the edge a little bit so that no gesso can seep down in there. I like to have a clean edge because, like I said, I don't frame them, and the nice clean edge just makes a nice pleasant appearance, in my humble opinion. You do it your way. You get to decide what you like best. Some people like having a lot of stuff dripping down the sides. It really shows the process, and I think that can be quite beautiful and interesting. But for the work I'm doing right now, I'm wanting the clean edge, so I'm just going to tape this out all around. So I'm going to be taping the back also, because if you've watched some of my other videos, you know that I do pouring medium, like a resin coat, and so the pouring medium sometimes flows onto the back, and it's easier to take off if I put the tape on it. I'm just using this thinner tape just to waste less tape. You could use the same width tape all around, but since this is a narrow part. Now, while I'm doing this, I want to tell you what gesso is. So the word gesso is an Italian word, and the original gesso, or true gesso, is made from a hide glue, usually rabbit skin glue, and marble dust, usually some kind of white pigment, and that was what the painters of the Middle Ages used. This predates actually oil painting, so in the days of egg tempera and so forth. Now, what most painters now use is an acrylic water-based gesso. So what I have here is a water-based gesso. It's acrylic polymer emulsion plus titanium dioxide is the pigment, and that's what sets apart a good quality gesso from a lesser quality gesso, is the amount of white pigment that's in there, because there's also chalk in here, calcium carbonate, and that gives the gesso a little bit of tooth, or a little bit of absorbency. So for the first coat, you want that. So that's what makes it different from white paint, is the calcium carbonate or the chalk in there. So I'm going to tape the rest of these panels, and then we'll come back. Okay, so here comes the fun part. We get to put the gesso on. I don't know why I love this so much. I guess because I love paint, and even though this isn't officially paint, it's just the liquid, the sensuality of the liquid color white color. Just putting it on, brushing it. I just love it. I'm sure you guys can relate. Just is what it is, what I like to do. Okay, so I'm stirring the gesso up because it's been sitting for a while, and just making sure that the polymer and the pigment and the calcium carbonate are all incorporated. Okay, so I want to talk about different types of gesso. You actually want the consistency to be like this, sort of like a heavy cream consistency, unless you're specifically buying a super heavy gesso. What I learned the hard way is that some of the inexpensive gessos load up on the calcium carbonate. It makes it thicker and more opaque, but then you have to water it down to get it to spread, and then you have the issue of underbinding. Underbinding is when you add too much water to paint or gesso or whatever acrylic material, and you are compromising the quality of the paint film for the long term. So you end up having cracking or lifting or whatever. Maybe not immediately, maybe in the future, but it's not a good thing. And I'll show you more about that on another video some later date, because I have some examples that I show when I teach. But okay, so now that the gesso's all stirred up, I'm going to dip my brush in, and these are smaller panels. What are they, like 6 inches by 6 inches? And I'm using, what is that, like a 2.5 inch wide brush, something like that. I don't need a huge brush for these. So I'm just going to brush it on. And you see how nicely that covers? So we know we have a good amount of white pigment in there, and it's already nice and bright and white. And because I've got the tape on there, I can let it go over the edge. Now, why would you want to do this yourself? Why wouldn't you just buy them? The reason is you can control the quality. When you buy pre-made panels or canvases, generally they are mass-produced, and they're airbrushing the gesso on them, like huge quantities. And so you're not getting as good a coverage, and also you might not get the same quality of gesso. You can't really control the quality of the gesso. Also, some of us like to put more gesso on and sand and smooth it out. So that's why you might want to buy your own panels or make your own stretch your own canvases and gesso them yourself, so you can have control over the quality of them. If you're just starting out, make life easy. Just buy them. It doesn't matter. They're actually perfectly fine, but if you're a professional and you're wanting your work to last, you're selling your work, I think it's important to ensure the quality of your materials, longevity of your materials. So this is super easy, just fun and satisfying. Just trying to get a nice smooth initial coat, and I'll probably do 2 or 3 more coats on these. Of course, rinse and wash your brush immediately after so that the gesso doesn't dry, or you can do the trick of wrapping it in some kind of like plastic wrap. This is sort of a house painter's trick, and wrap that up for the next coat so you don't have to rinse it and wipe it. So I'm going to let these dry, and then I'll come back and put another coat on. Hi! So these are dry now. I actually had to wait overnight because it's cool and damp here in the winter, and they didn't dry before I had to leave for the evening. So now here I'm going to show you the fun part is the second coat. There's a little secret to this, especially if you're working on panel. So if you can look at this, you will see that the brush strokes, or you may recall, brush strokes all going this direction. Okay, if you build up a lot of coats of this over time, you will have this uneven surface. So what I'm going to do is do the next coats perpendicular.
So in the opposite direction. They were going, brush strokes were going this way initially. For the second coat, they'll go this way. And then if I do a third coat, they go that way. So it's almost like I'm weaving gesso across the surface of the panel. And I got this tip years ago when I did study medieval painting techniques and I learned the true gesso, and that was kind of gross because I am a vegetarian and you had to boil rabbit skin glue, which smelled really yucky. It was, like I said, a hide glue, and now I realize, like, well, back then I realized I didn't want to do that anymore, but it was a really cool technique. I loved the surface it made. It made a really gorgeous kind of absorbent, silky, velvety surface to paint on, and I was painting with oils at the time. But yeah, just super simple, just using the same brush, and by the way, the brush did stay nice and moist, so I didn't have to wash my brush overnight, so that was useful. Okay. So I wanted to check in because I thought you might be wondering, when is it time to put the next coat on? So these are still a little bit cool to the touch. I can feel some moisture in them. This one over here is a little thicker. It's definitely wet. So I'm going to wait a bit longer to put the next coats on. I've been applying it, usually when you can apply horizontally, you can get the coats on a little thicker, which is fine because I'm going to sand it down. And then you build up enough gesso a little more quickly than when they're vertical. Tends to be, the coats go on a little bit more thinly. So I'll be back. So we're back, and I'm opening up my brush, which actually sat overnight like this, still nice and moist. That said, it is pretty cold here. It's winter time, and the air is also damp. So I'm ready to do another coat. For my personal taste, I like a really smooth gesso. I may have mentioned that. So I'm going to build up 4 or 5 coats and then sand it. For those who don't require a smooth surface, maybe your work is very impasto, thick, heavy brushstroke, this might be fine. You might be ready to go. But I'm going to just keep adding coats, and then I'll sand it at the end to smooth them out.